Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the Mighty Jingles. And today we have something of a tender love story for you, if you will, in this tale of two tanks, starring Zacchaeus, I'm assuming that's how you pronounce his name, here in the Chinese Tier 8 Premium Medium Tank, the 122TM, I don't think I've ever featured this tank before, and Lusker 121YT over there, in the French AMX 1357, which doesn't really need much of an introduction. We've definitely featured that tank before. The 122TM, however, is a sort of what if the Chinese had actually been able to make something of the Soviet T-62 that they managed to get their hands on during the Sino-Soviet border war in 1969, because they did capture a T-62 and it heavily influenced the design of this thing, but they just weren't able to make it work. But despite the fact that this thing is actually based on the T-62, this is very definitely not your typical communist high-tier brawling medium tank, because it does share a lot in common with your other typical Soviet mediums, but a brawler it is not. The team have just suffered their first casualty. Type 64 Scout got a little bit too brave, paid the price. Friendly T-25 down there, facing off against the enemy Barask, and probably wishing he wasn't. One more shot and he's dead, and, well, yep, he's dead too. Now that Barask is definitely going to be a problem. But if you look at the map, you'll see that the majority of the team have actually headed up to the hill. The opposite is true of the enemy team. The majority of the enemy team are still camping the base, which is kind of understandable. There's a lot of lower tier tank destroyers still camping the base there, that are either too slow to make it up to the top of the hill, or they're a little bit too vulnerable to risk being caught crossing open ground. Which means that in theory, the team should be able to take the hill, since they're going to face relatively little opposition up there. We should probably talk about the friendly M6 on the team. If you have a look at the minimap, you can see that nearly 2 minutes into the battle he still hasn't budged from the cap circle, which suggests that despite being in a very, very good tier 6 heavy tank, he probably took one look at the matchmaking, decided nope, and then went to do something better while waiting for the next battle. Jingles, you don't know that. I mean, there could be any number of reasons why he was forced to go away from the keyboard. Well, yeah, that's true. It's kind of suspicious, though, how it's always the guys who are bottom tier, and it always happens right at the beginning of the battle, though. I mean, you're not wrong, there could be any reason why he's gone AFK. I'm just saying that when you see patterns like this emerging, there's usually a good reason for it. Except it's usually a bad reason. So while we wait for the situation to develop down here, what is Zacchaeus doing down here, and why is he not up on the top of the hill brawling it out with the rest of the team? Well, despite being based on the T-62 and being a high-ish tier communist medium tank, the 122TM is definitely not a brawler. For a start, it doesn't have the mobility. On paper, this thing has a top speed of 50 kilometers per hour. In reality, however, 40 is probably the best you can hope for. It has the same horsepower, a 580 horsepower engine, as the T-62 upon which it's based, but it's a lot heavier due to all of the extra crap that the Chinese stuck onto this thing, including a 120mm gun, more on that in a moment, a pair of rocket launchers, and twice the number of heavy machine guns. Basically, it's kind of sluggish, and it also has terrible ground resistance, so 40 kilometers per hour is the best that you can realistically hope for. Gonna get this Barask now, of course. There it is, the enemy team's first casualty. His team have suffered 4. And now, of course, with the VK over here changing places with the Barask, well, that's going to be bad news for the VK. Because this 120mm gun is kind of very, very good, but also kind of not. Oh, notice that Lusker, he just took a hit, actually, in the AMX 1357, has just popped down here to assist in spotting for Zacchaeus, after giving up his midfield spotting position to the friendly E25. But yeah, more about this gun. Unlike your typical brawling communist medium tanks that tend to have 100mm guns that have a good rate of fire with questionable accuracy, which doesn't really matter because you tend to use them up close and personal because, you know, they're brawlers. The 1-2... oh wow, I've never seen that before. Shows you how much attention I pay to this end of the map. But yeah, the 122TM definitely does not have a brawling tank gun. It does not have a fast rate of fire. It has an extremely slow rate of fire, resulting in absolutely abysmal damage per minute. But it has big alpha damage because it's a 120mm gun, not a 100 or a 115mm gun. And it is very accurate, although it does have a kind of slow aiming time. But with the slow reload, the slow aiming time really doesn't matter. And it also, very unusually for a Chinese tank, has above average gun depression of 8 degrees. And that, coupled with the very, very strong turret, although the turret does have significant weak spots which are relatively easy to hit, at close range means that unlike basically every other high-ish tier communist medium tank, the 122TM is not a brawler, it is something of a sniper, particularly in a hull-down position. With Luska in his midfield spotting position over there, we're about to start reaping the benefits of the partnership between these two. Yeah, damn big alpha damage on this thing for a medium tank. Which is, you know, fairly consistent with the other Chinese mediums. But this is where we really start to see the fruits of the partnership between Luska over there in the AMX 1357 and Zacchaeus here in the 122TM. And as predicted, the team have taken the top of the hill. I mean, they should have. I think they outnumbered the enemy up there by 2-1, because the enemy down here outnumber Zacchaeus' team by 2-1, but they lost a lot of tanks doing it, and for some bizarre reason, the largely unarmoured tank destroyer decided it was a good idea to rush down from the hill into the woods to the south of the hill that were infested with enemy defenders, while the basically full health heavy tank stayed at the top of the hill. And turns out I owe an apology to the M6 player. If you were paying attention to chat, you probably caught it, and because I didn't address it the instant it happened, you're probably demanding my head on a stick in the comments section right now, but apparently he actually suffered a blackout, which probably means he's playing from Ukraine or someplace like that. So yeah, he didn't just rage quit when he saw the matchmaking. So my apologies to the M6 player. The enemy team are now counter-attacking the hill. They just took out the Oni that camped the hillside, and things are not looking very good up there. The only friendly tank left up there is the TVP, and he does have 2 kills to his name, and he does still have full health, but if the enemy team are counter-attacking, which they are doing, he might not have full health for very long. So Zacchaeus decides it's time to abandon. Well, I mean, there's been at least 6 enemies on the other side of that field since the beginning of the battle, and they're not budging. They're all mostly either very fast tank destroyers with no armour that will get obliterated crossing the open field, or they're very slow tank destroyers with lots of armour that will still get obliterated crossing the open field. So, judging that they haven't made a move this entire game, they're not likely to start now, both Zacchaeus in the 122TM and Luska in the AMX 13GF decide to relocate to the middle of the field, hoping, at least when they started relocating, to provide some support and backup to the TVP, who unfortunately has just died. But they're going to get themselves into a position where they can defend, because nobody else is doing it, against any enemy tanks that are going to come down from the hill, having eliminated all of the remaining friendlies up there, while also being in a position to support the 2 remaining tanks who are defending the base from the field. There's a good hit there on the Progetto 46, and possibly he can get another. Oh, the E25 just got himself killed, and he's there in chat. I know what he's going to say. You don't need... Yeah. He's not wrong. You didn't need to say it. Another good hit, not quite as good on the Progetto, and it was never going to be enough to finish him off. Of course, he was always going to get spotted doing that. And now he's going to need to start trading some of his hit points for time, as Luska, conscious of the fact that there's not just the Progetto 46, there's an enemy Tiger around there somewhere as well, tries to skirt around in a nice wide arc, looking for a better spotting position. At the moment though, and there's the Tiger, it's all going to be down to Zacchaeus at the moment until Luska gets himself into a good spot. And Zacchaeus is, of course, attracting a lot of attention. Here's the thing though, because Zacchaeus is attracting a lot of attention, there are only 5 members left alive on his team, and Luska has been attracting a fair bit of attention too. He just got hit. He's down to less than 100 hit points, which means that all of those campers in the enemy base on the southern end of the field, if they're paying any attention, should now be pushing across that field while Luska is elsewhere and not spotting them, and by, simple mathematics should be able to figure out that there are only 2 defenders left. And in fact, some of them are doing exactly that. Unfortunately, they're not all doing exactly that, which is to be expected in a random battle. I mean, this isn't a clan battle, nobody's on voice comms, they're probably not communicating with each other, everybody's pretty much doing their own thing. But it does mean that even this limited, seriously, 8 hit points? Come on, game. But it does mean that, well, even this limited number of defenders are able to handle a limited push across the field when they would almost certainly have struggled against a massed push across the field. Now, the enemy Skoda T25 that's made it across the field is probably going to be a bit of a problem. And in fact, thanks to him spotting, the enemy Super Hellcat has taken out the P-43, so there's now only 4 of them left. But there are only so many threats that Zacchaeus can focus on at once, particularly when you've got a gun with a slow reload like this. He's going to go for the Tiger, because the Tiger's threatening his flank, and if he can clear up the Tiger, he can sweep around, and it wasn't enough to kill him, but that's alright, that's exactly what Luska was waiting for. That 57mm gun might not do much damage per hit, but it has a large magazine, and it fires very, very quickly. So the Tiger's down, which means that Zacchaeus is now free to flank around. There was an 88 down here somewhere. Tried to push across the field with the T28 prototype, and then saw what happened to the T28 prototype and thought better of it. The Skoda T25 has been taken care of, and yep, there he is. Got spotted in return, shot whizzed overhead. Oh, it's from the Super Hellcat, possibly also the SU-100. Didn't hit, so we don't know for sure. There's the Hummel. The Super Hellcat, I don't know if his engine's been knocked out or he's been tracked, but if he's getting out of there, he's left it way too late. And he's dead too. Now, threat to the flank taken care of. 88, still on full health. I mean, it's a tough machine, it just has a terrible gun. He's not going to be on full health for much longer. For the first time in this battle, they now actually outnumber the enemy team by a kill. And it ain't going to take many of those to finish off the 88. Those look like 57mm shells pinging mostly harmlessly off his armour, but it's keeping him... Well, let's face it, the 88 knew exactly where the threat was there, but it didn't do him any good. And that just leaves the Hummel and the SU-100. The SU-100, who probably hasn't travelled more than 100 metres from his spawn point this entire battle. And if who, along with the Super Hellcat, had actually taken the hint and moved up with the rest of the team, like the 88, the T25, the T28 prototype, at the right moment, might not be staring down the barrel of a 120mm gun right now. Well, not right now, but you know what I mean. It's a figure of speech. There's the Hummel. That was a good spot there from Luska, because the Hummel was in the woods just to the south of the hill. And he tried to make it down to the woods right behind the enemy base without being spotted in order to hide in there, but Luska got eyes on him. If not for that spot from Luska, the Hummel might have been able to hide in those woods down there and actually drag this out into a draw. But he didn't, so he isn't. He's trying to hide behind the building. I think Luska might... Yep, he's got him. Good stuff. That just leaves the SU-100, who... Oh dear, he had a choice of 2 directions to face and he picked the wrong one. Well, at least it's consistent. The SU-100 doesn't appear to have made many decent choices this entire battle. I mean, I'm not putting it all on the SU-100. He's a bottom-tier tank destroyer in a Tier 8 game. I mean, there was a lot more that had to go wrong rather than his decision-making in order for his team to lose that. And honestly, most of it was just down to this partnership between Zacchaeus and Luska in the 122TM and the AMX 1357 GF. Sadly, for some strange reason, I don't have a post-battle results screen for this one, so I can't actually prove that. But, well, you've all spent the last 14 minutes watching the evidence, so you guys judge for yourselves. In the meantime, hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.